Of course. Welcome to Life and Money Podcast with Danielle and Franchelle.
I'm Danielle,
And I'm Franchelle.
and this is the podcast where we talk about what's keeping you from having the life and money you want and deserve. What are we
Yes. And
talking about today?
today we are talking about relationships, and we're actually starting a series for you guys, a series so that we can break down the ins and outs of all of the different kind of relationships that you navigate.
So which relationship topic are we going to talk about today? Because like what? There's like personal relationships with like friends. There's relationships with your parents, relationship with a loved one, romantic relationships, relationships with yourself, relationship with
Yep.
your kids. Which ones are we talking about today?
Let's talk about kids. You want to start with kids?
I think so.
Yes. So, when it comes to life and money, two big areas where there's lots of complexity and it's not static, right? It's not like you figure it out and you have it figured out for the rest of your life. It's always changing and moving, and there's ways to maintain it. Where I see um, the opportunity comes for, like with coaching, is in learning how to keep yourself calm as you navigate all these different things, so that as you are not only communicating with your children, but you're also raising them to be adults who have to function. It becomes important, to know how to not only manage yourself, but how do you translate what you know down to the next generation.
Lord have mercy. So, for those that do not know, I have four kids. I have a 15-year-old that's closer to 16. I have a 13-year-old girl, and then I have twins that are almost 12, 11 and a half. And when I tell you that I had this misconception that having children, they came from me, so they would think like me, do like me, and I would just mold them into what I wanted. I was going to do it really well, and I was going to have these perfect
It's funny now, right?
people. And I was like, yeah, what could go wrong? Other people didn't do it well, but me, I got this. This is going to be cake. I have a very different thought on it today.
Right.
Um, and one of the things that I learned, and you kind of alluded to, like even like being calm. So one of the amazing humans I get the opportunity to live with, just the other day, took a toy, deconstructed the toy, got all the gooey stuff out of the center, and decided to throw them up to the 25-foot ceilings to
Mhm.
see if they would come down. So he did it again and again and again and
Yep.
again. So I had these globs of glue on my ceiling. And I saw one and I was like, whoa. And then I turned my head and saw that he had decorated the entire ceiling with it.
Ugh.
And because I do practice all emotions and they aren't bad, but we get to decide how we process that. So anger came up.
Mhm.
I took a breath. I said, I'm going to need some time alone for a moment.
Yeah.
And I went into my bedroom.
Yes.
And I took a breath. I had to think, is this a big deal? Like what, I had to kind of go through this whole little uncovering. But that
Yeah.
was it. And then I came back to have a conversation, and this became this big old thing. But I didn't always handle it that way. But my
Mhm.
children got to help me to understand what was inside of me,
Mhm.
what was passed down, ideas that were passed down, how we didn't handle anger. Like, I am not perfect, but I didn't want to parent him from anger.
Mhm.
It was okay that I was angry. He knew I was angry, but
Mhm.
I didn't want to parent or discipline from that emotion. So I had to
Mhm.
regulate myself first.
Right.
Um, it costs money to get it fixed, multiple
Mhm.
solutions to be able to fix it. All kinds of things squeezed. My singleness came into parts. I'm like, who's going to get a ladder? Because it turned out we needed a ladder. Am I supposed to get a 15-foot ladder? Like, am I supposed to care? What am
Mm.
I supposed to do? Like, all of these things came up. Um, but ultimately, I wanted him to feel love, even
Mhm.
while disciplining and
Yeah.
showing. But I can only love him if I love myself. And like, I have things and systems in place for me. Um, but I love what kids bring out.
Mm.
And it also brings up a lot of money. So like this would be
Mm.
really great because he had earmarked some money for to buy an his friend owns a new clothing line, just launched a new
Mm.
clothing line. He had earmarked the money, but he had to use that money to come up with a
Mm.
solution to fix it.
Yeah. Oh, to get the to clean the ceiling.
To clean the ceiling. And we
Oh,
came up with multiple solutions and they weren't working. We bought a
really?
pad with a little hook on the end, and it was just moving it around and creating skid marks on the ceiling.
Oh,
And
what?
we had so it was a big deal. But how do you parent and have good relationships while squeezed if you don't do the
Yeah.
work yourself first? You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like ultimately, like when it comes down to it, it's not what happened, it's the relationship, like the way that you maintain the connection with the kid, you know. And so the way that you discipline has less to do with whatever the, you know, infringement was, and more to do with how can I maintain the connection even though, like, we got to have this conversation that, you know, whatever happened. Like, I think I told you guys in the money squad a while back, several months ago, when Gracie got her iPad and she was able to somehow, because these kids are so tech savvy, but she was able to somehow change that payment where you can put your thumb and do the biometric and pay and buy things. She was able to change that to her own thumb, and then she used my Apple Card to like buy up like $350 worth of Roblox stuff. And it was like in that moment, and I'm like, was, you know, managing money, right? Like actively managing money. I didn't need that at that moment. And so it's like, how can I maintain the relationship? We have to address this issue because you can't, I'm not going to let you grow up to be this person. But we need to maintain this relationship while we have this conversation, while you are being disciplined, while you are learning from your mistakes. And I think that's the thing that if more parents had the capacity to do, we wouldn't have so much generational trauma.
But how do they get that? So what did you end up? What did that conversation with Gracie look like? What did it look like in action?
So Grace is the kind of little girl. She knows when she's wrong, right? So she immediately, when I saw that it happened, she just burst out crying. Like, oh my god! You know, it's just so much drama, right? She's just like distraught and beside herself. And I'm like, you knew what you were doing when you put your thumb on that thing 42,000 times. Like, why are you crying now? You didn't cry when you were doing it. So the conversation, I calmed her down, and the conversation was just a lot of, I love you. I understand. Shopping is fun. Of course, it's fun. I would love to scan my thumb and buy a bunch of stuff too. We have the same conversation every time we go to the store, by the way, too, because somebody usually has a meltdown because we're not buying something. And I'm like, do you know how many things I want out of this Target? I could take this whole Target home with me, but I can't. And neither can you. And you need to learn that now while you're 8, instead of like being an adult who tries to buy everything in Target every time you go. But it's I get it. I understand. Like, you're not weird, you're not wrong, you're not crazy, nothing's wrong with you. You're not a criminal because you just stole $350 from my Apple Card. You're not wrong. But there are consequences to your actions. So, I got to take your iPad away. Now, mind you, it wasn't the first time we had iPad issues. So that's why that was the consequence, because we had like issues all along the way. And so this was the culmination of it all. And it's just like, you know what? I got to take your iPad away. And I actually took her iPad away, and she didn't have an iPad for months. It was probably 3 months she didn't have an iPad. She was so happy. She would tell us, like, it's so great. I don't have my iPad and I'm reading and I'm doing these things. And like, she enjoyed it, like not having all the screen. Jude is actually about to get his iPad taken away when he comes home from school today. He doesn't know that yet. but, but I'm
Which
like, but he has an example. It's like, you see how wonderful Grace's iPad free time was. So you get to experience the same thing, buddy. Um, but yeah, so I think I learned this from a friend a few years ago. who is male, he was like really into his fatherhood relationship, right? Like that was his big thing. He ended up like writing, I think it was like a weekly or monthly article in a Christian newspaper about his like what his thoughts were on fatherhood. It was like super important to him. And I remember he would always say, it's the connection, it's the connection. And so no matter what you do or say, especially in times of discipline, it has to be done with that connection intact. Like I'm not gonna cut off the connection. So like I never send my kids to their room. I never like isolate them if they do something wrong. It's always like we're still connected. If anything, I'm like, if they storm out, I have drama. I have a drama queen and a drama king. So if you guys don't know it, I have 8-year-old twins, and they're very different, but they like to storm out of the room and like go someplace and cry. And I always bring them back in. And I'm always like, come here, and I like hold them, and like we do a lot of tight hugging and rocking. Or if somebody's upset, I'm like, here, come sit with me, come sit here and be upset. It's okay to be upset. I don't want you to have to hide, like go away and express your emotions. Like you can be in community, you can be, we're not casting you out. Is I think it's the thought process is like you don't get cast out because you're having bad feelings or you did something that you feel like is wrong. So I think ultimately that's our core fear, right? That we get cast
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good in maintaining relationship. I have a client who does not have children, but I introduced the concept of, because she's concerned about when she does have children and disciplining, she came from a high discipline environment without communication. So
Mm-hmm.
she might be disciplined for something and she had no idea
Oh,
why, right? And then I introduced the concept of only having discipline from a calm state. She was like,
mhm.
I don't even know what you're talking about,
Right.
right? It wasn't modeled for me,
Mm,
disciplining from a calm state. And even like with I don't remember what the actual, oh, I do. My son, 15-year-old, was hiding sparkling waters. You're not
mm,
supposed to drink upstairs, and the sparkling waters are mine. That's the one thing that in the house that's mine. So
mm,
he was taking them and hiding them in his room. And
mhm.
so when the housekeeper came to clean it out, there was a whole pile. And so I sent him a picture and I was like, I'm super disappointed.
Yeah.
So when it came to picking him up, he was like, it was at night, and he was like, I know you're mad. I don't know if you're going to come and get me. I'll walk home.
The drama, right? And it's just like,
No, this is not the first time I've been mad or disappointed. It won't be
right.
the last. And there's nothing you can do to stop me from loving you. Like,
Exactly.
there's
That's
nothing
it.
you can do on this earth
Yeah.
that is my love for you is not negotiable.
Yeah.
Even when I'm angry or frustrated, even when I'm disappointed, even when you
Mhm.
do something wrong, my love for you is not negotiable.
Yeah.
And really helping them to understand that.
Mhm.
But in order to do that, you have to have that kind of love for yourself.
Yeah.
Only way you can give that love, that non-negotiable love, is that if you give that to yourself first,
Yes. Yes.
um, and be able to talk to yourself with calmness and give yourself that
Mhm.
respect, then you have the capacity to give it to someone else.
Yeah.
Because I didn't come from a world where the love was non-negotiable. It had
Mhm.
all kinds of contingencies. You must do these
Mhm.
things and make me happy this way in order to receive my love. It was a currency
Yeah.
exchange versus this is what you have from me. Like you don't
Yeah.
have to earn it or be
Mhm.
good. Like
Yeah.
even, and I used I said, even if you murder someone, I'm turning you in, but I'm
Mhm.
still going to love you.
Yeah.
Like, like I will
Mhm.
help you get access to the right choices.
Mhm.
Um, but my love for you is not negotiable.
Right.
But it's a process in cultivating that type of love for your
Mhm.
kids because they stump on like every
They know how to press the buttons. They know exactly like, that's the
every
exact button you shouldn't press.
even
It's really.
Gracie's timing. Oh, I apologize, but
Oh, go
Gracie's
ahead.
timing with getting the Robux, like, it was just like the
Mhm.
perfect timing
Oh,
to be able to push on
oh my
a
gosh.
tender spot.
It really was. I was like, "Really? Right now? Okay, thank you." Yeah. And I feel like you know, I don't, maybe it's cuz I had kids older, like later in life, but I don't get that upset.
Mm,
I don't really get mad, and I think it's because I'm always thinking about the end. Not the end of life, but like I'm thinking about, this is so funny. I'm thinking about when they're adults. You know, there are people who don't want to be around their parents for good
mm,
reason. And there are people who cannot get enough of being around their parents. Which
mm,
parent do I want to be? Do I want my kids to grow up and like love to be close to me? Not because I give them a guilt trip or force them or anything like that, but because we're just cool like that. Like they know they can trust me, and they know that I love them, and it's not, like you said, it's not conditional. And I'm always thinking about that relationship. And I feel like that's just like a benefit of having, because I wouldn't have been, if I had had my kids earlier, I wouldn't have, I just grew up like when I was 40. Like that was, I just grew up. Before I was 40, I was legit 14 years old. Like seriously, I went from 14 to
for
40, right? And so it's like now I can see that, you know, the reason why someone would want to be around you is that you treat them with respect. And
mm,
when it comes to like communicating, you know, how would I want someone to communicate with me? Plus, I think both of us, we see a lot of people in our coaching practice who are trying to unwind all these wounds, right?
mm.
Especially the one of like, I'm getting, you know, kicked out of the tribe and die alone in the wilderness. That's a universal wound. I think everybody kind of butts up against that at some point, that like there's something that I can do that'll cause me to be an outcast, and then I'm going to die alone in the wilderness. Where does that begin? Like all these things begin in childhood.
All of them begin in childhood. You know what
Yeah.
I think you said that is so brilliant is your vision
Mm.
for like you move from your vision, right?
Mhm.
All attributes. I'm not gonna pretend I get upset.
Mhm.
So I love your higher power self. I'm gonna borrow some of that. But
Mhm.
you move from your end result of ultimately I want to be the parent that my children enjoy being around, not because I
Mhm.
force them or guilt trip them, but because it is a place that's rejuvenating. It gives to
Mhm.
them. They feel nourished. It's a great place to be. So
Yeah.
all of your decisions are made from that
Mhm.
space. And trauma has a way of hijacking unless you're
Mhm.
super intentional, right?
And that's the
Because
thing. Yeah.
so
Mhm.
people are moving from these unconscious soundtracks,
Mhm.
right? And just allowing what they've just their defense mechanisms and what they've gone through to run the soundtrack. But what you've done is you've pulled the emergency stop button and you said it stops here. I
Mhm.
am going to make all of my movements when it comes to my children from a place that they ultimately, when grown,
Mhm.
desire to be in my space.
Yeah.
Um, Not that I have to force them or guilt trip them, but this is a place that they enjoy being. I love that. I love
Mhm.
that. And I don't know, you attribute it to age, but I don't attribute it to age. I just attribute it to your conscious awareness of
Yeah.
what do I ultimately want? So your vision, your
Yeah.
signature for what this period of your life is going to be. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So fantastic.
Yeah. I honestly don't think it's age. I think for me it was age because I had to go through lots of things, but I think some people are way more mature at younger ages than I ever was. Um, but I think in the moment, because there are times when I do get angry, but in the moment, I realize I it's kind of like I've trained myself to bring myself back to this point that in the future, in 2 weeks or 3 months or 3 years, nobody's gonna remember the detail. I the only reason why I remember it was $356 is because I keep telling people that Gracie used her tiny little thumb to charge up $356. That's it. We just, it's a joke around our house now. But for most of these, you know, trespasses, we're not going to remember the details of it, but we are going to remember that our mom sent us to our room or yelled at us or spanked us or something where, you know, we did something bad and we got thrown out, outcast, right? Or it was the punishment lasted forever, or they like even with us talking about this, there was a point in time where I had to tell Jude, I was like, we're not going to talk about that anymore because it was becoming like this constant like re-beating her for
Flash.
the, yeah, like we're
Yeah.
like bringing it up, and it ended up being a joke. But initially she was like, every time we would bring it up, it's like this wounding her again, right? And I'm like, no, that's not what we want to do, right? Like either it's funny
Yeah.
or it's not funny. If it's not funny to her, it's not funny.
It's
um
not funny.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not funny. Yeah. So, but now it's kind of funny to everybody, probably because we paid it off. So now it's like it's easier to laugh about. But in the moment, it was just like, where's the money coming from? She's like, I'm gonna do all the chores. But yeah, I think knowing that in the grand scheme of things, it's insignificant, no matter what it
Mm.
is.
No matter
Like
what it is.
yeah, no matter what it is. And I love how Alex Hormozy says that whenever he starts getting like too bogged down in a situation, there's something you can look up on YouTube where it kind of zooms you out until Earth is like a tiny dot. Like you just zoom out and you just realize how small and insignificant and what a tiny little speck of time we have on Earth. And do I want to spend my tiny speck of time on Earth worrying about something that's figure outable ultimately?
Mm.
Right? So in my
Yeah.
communication with my kids, if it's not detrimental, if it, we can figure this out, I'd rather collaborate with them. We have family meetings, not
Yep.
often, but when we have them, something's wrong. you know, we have a family meeting and we talk about what happened and how discipline should be handled. And sometimes there is no discipline. Sometimes having that conversation is enough.
Hmm.
But I want them, because it's like when you have little kids, you're not raising them for you. Like I'm not raising, I think a lot of our problem is that we were raised to serve the person that we were
Yep.
raised by, right? It's like I'm not raising them to serve me. That would not be helpful. I want them to want to be around me. I don't want them to serve me. So I'm
Yeah.
raising them to be able to see a problem and figure out a solution for themselves. So I'm going to let them in on my problem solving, thought process. And I constantly tell my kids ever since they were born, this is my first time. Like I'm new here at this motherhood thing. I'm new just like y'all. I don't have all the answers. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and to your point, this is my first rodeo,
Mhm.
and I think about all the lessons that it took me a while to get, and I've been
Mhm.
here 4+ decades, and none
Mhm.
of mine have been here more than one. Like
Right.
much more than 1 decade, and it's like, am I really
Yeah.
expecting you to get that on the first
Right.
run? But that becomes more of a something I'm trying to feed for me versus
Yeah.
nourishing them. And they're
Yeah.
not like, I get the privilege, but they're their own humans
Yes.
that I just want to support on their own life trajectory, not for me.
Yeah.
And but that love is the signature, and that they feel it in
Mhm.
all of the different fabrics. Oh, and that it's okay to get it wrong and apologize. I'm
Yes.
a big, when I get it wrong,
Mm.
apologizing. I say I
Yeah.
was wrong. I could have handled that better. So
Mhm.
they're used to, we have team meetings too. Anybody
Mhm.
can call a team meeting at any time. We have to
Mhm.
stop what we're doing, meet wherever we're at, and talk about it. But we talk openly, and everybody has a role like that they can contribute. I'm not the dictator. Like
Right.
I,
Yeah.
I oversee the
Mhm.
infrastructure, but
Mhm.
they all have a part to play. But again, even like with like you teaching them about money,
Mhm.
and me teaching them about emotions, that emotional will, like this will is
Mhm.
something that everybody's liable to bring up and talk about it at any given time. So
That's so
I just
good.
want them to have the tools to succeed, but not do it
Yeah.
because of me, but
Right.
just give them more tools than I think you and
Right.
I had growing up, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I think so. And I think that that's kind of the way it should be, school, and like when teachers send stuff home, I'm like, that's not my job. I'm not gonna teach them that. I teach them on the job training, right? It's like I will teach them all this stuff, but in a way that is more relevant to living life. But I think that that's our job, is to really give them that emotional, even the financial, like all of that structure, so that when they're out of the house, They can kind of know how to manage that. They're not figuring it out when they leave the house. But also that, you know, they're not doing it for me. So they're not feeling like they need to hide something from me.
Yeah.
I have a lot of perfectionist, and you know this is y'all know Danielle's my life coach. I have a lot of perfectionist things that I am constantly working through, like, constantly, having to identify it and realize, oh, this is you trying to be perfect, right? So I see that and I try to, we're just steering, like navigating through life. And I try to find out, where this is coming from. And so I don't like over mother my kids to where they think they have to be perfect. I'm
Yeah.
gonna screw them up in different ways, but I definitely am not gonna screw them up in the same way that I was, like whatever I
Yeah.
adapted and wherever I
New
got.
ways.
Yeah, do something different, and they'll have to figure it out for their kids, and that's the way the
They'll
world
have to
works.
figure it out. And they'll know that they were loved along the way. I apologize all the time.
Absolutely,
I'm like, listen, I'll help support you when you get your therapist. So
exactly.
not a
Right.
big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
Not a big deal.
So
So
how
like
can you? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna do the
You
same
were
thing.
gonna wrap
Go for
it
it.
up. Okay,
Yeah,
we're
we're
gonna
gonna
wrap
do the
it
same
up.
thing.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's how can people help because your ability to be calm and confident with your money
Mm,
was the gateway to be calm and confident parenting when money
yeah.
issues came up.
Hmm.
And that is a skill, especially as they get older and going to want more things, need more things, cars,
Hmm.
all the things.
Hmm.
Um, how do people get access to being calm and confident with their money, specifically if they're a spender?
So good. Yes. So I have a really easy way to start. It's 5 simple steps to heal your relationship with money. It's for spenders. This is it's a guide that's attached to a 5-day challenge. So Gracie is a spender, so it helps me to know like how to make sure she doesn't grow up with shame about being a spender. And we talk about all those things inside Money Squad. So all you have to do is text spender to 44144 and you'll get started. How about you? How can people get started working with you?
Yeah, so if people need access to being able to love themselves more and feel calm in their body so they can love people around them at a higher level, I love this work. It's the gateway to deep love, love for your children, love for yourself, and all the people around. There's a couple of ways you can get a free guide, which you can get started. To get that guide, you can text purpose to 66866. But if you want to up that experience, I have a 12-week program called Core Coaching. If you want to know if it's right for you, I do free consultations, and you can reach out to me anywhere you see Danielle Nicole Life Coach, and get in contact with me. My website, my Instagram, TikTok, everywhere, and I'll schedule some time, and we can get to know each other and start this process. So.
Awesome. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Wait, no. Subscribe, like,
Oh, yes,
share.
we have to. We'll see you before
The
next week
pictures and
because we
stuff.
haven't been. Yes. If you like this content, if you like these conversations, please subscribe to our podcast and like and comment below. Do we have something we want them to comment on? I
Um,
want to know what
yes.
what their kid did that like made them just lose it. Since we both shared crazy kid
Yeah.
stories, kid behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to know. I did just ask one of mine. I said, you might have to live somewhere else if this is going to continue. He was like, wait, what? So,
Right?
yes, what has squeezed you so tight and pulled out all the emotions? Leave it below. We want to hear these stories because we're not the only ones. Don't leave us
We
out here.
cannot
We're
be,
not, we
please.
cannot be the only ones. So,
Yes.
all
All
right.
right.
Yay.
Now,
We'll see you
bye.
next week.
Now,
Yeah, now
bye.
bye. It's good.
Okay.
Bye.